The notification pinged at 11:42 p.m., a soft chime that felt like a gunshot in the silence of my home office. It was a voice note from my wife, Sarah. She was supposed to be 300 miles away in a rustic cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains, drinking cheap Chardonnay and laughing about girl stuff with her colleagues. But the moment I pressed play, my stomach didn't just drop, it turned into lead. Her voice was too steady, the pitch too rehearsed, and the background forest sounds felt like a loop track from a meditation app. As a senior lead engineer for a firm that specializes in forensic AI and biometric authentication, I don't just listen to audio, I see the architecture of sound. And Sarah's "I miss you, honey" sounded like a blueprint for a lie. Before we dive deeper into this digital betrayal, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop a comment below. Your support helps us keep bringing these high-stakes stories to life. I sat there in the glow of 3 monitors, the blue light etching lines into my face that felt deeper than they were an hour ago. Sarah and I had been married for 8 years. 8 years of shared passwords, a joint cloud drive that held every photo of our vacations, our tax returns, and our dreams. She was the marketing director for a high-end tech firm, reporting directly to a man named Marcus, a guy who wore $3,000 suits and looked at everyone like they were a bug he was deciding whether or not to squash. Sarah always said Marcus was intense but brilliant. I just thought he was a predator in Italian leather. I dragged Sarah's audio file into Aegis, a proprietary neural network tool I'd been developing for deep layer acoustic isolation. On the surface, it's just a wife telling her husband she's heading to bed early because the mountain air made her sleepy. But when I ran the first pass, stripping the 60 Hz hum and the artificial bird chirps, the waveform began to bleed secrets. I saw a secondary frequency, a low vibrational murmur that shouldn't have been there if she was alone in a cabin bedroom. I felt a cold sweat prickle my neck. My fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard, the clicks sounding like hammers. I isolated the 150 Hz to 250 Hz range, the typical masculine chest voice register. I boosted the gain by 12 decibels and applied a sophisticated denoising filter. The silence in my office grew heavy, suffocating. I hit play on the isolated track. First, there was a wet, sliding sound, the sound of skin on skin. Then, a voice. It wasn't Sarah's. It was a deep, gravelly baritone, hushed but commanding. "Tell him you're turning off your phone now," the voice whispered. It was Marcus. I knew that voice from a dozen boring corporate galas. "I'm turning off my phone now," Sarah's voice repeated, her tone a perfect, eerie mirror of his cadence. She wasn't just lying. She was being coached in real time. "Tell him the reception is spotty," Marcus whispered again. I could hear the smirk in his voice, the arrogance of a man who thought he was invisible behind the digital curtain. "The reception is really spotty up here, David," Sarah said into the mic. The room seemed to tilt. Every memory of the last 6 months, the late nights at the office, the sudden password change on her iPad, the way she looked at me with a mix of pity and boredom, snapped into a sickeningly clear mosaic. She wasn't at a girls' trip. She was with him, likely in a suite at the very hotel my company had secured for the upcoming tech summit. They were using our mountain retreat cover to hide a rendezvous that was clearly more than a one-time mistake. I looked at the waveform on my screen. It looked like a jagged mountain range, a visual representation of the peak of her betrayal. My hand hovered over the mouse. I could call her. I could scream. I could demand she FaceTime me right now and show me the room. But I've learned one thing in 2 decades of coding. When you find a bug in the system, you don't just patch it. You find the source, you isolate the corrupted data, and you delete it so it can never infect your life again. Sarah thought she was the one playing the game, sheltered by Marcus's power and her own cleverness. She forgot who built the vault where she kept her life. She forgot that as the primary admin for our entire digital existence, I didn't just have the keys, I owned the locks. I opened a terminal window. The cursor blinked, steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Login, admin, password, redacted. I navigated to the directory for her corporate bypass, a VPN I had personally set up for her so she could work securely from home. I could see her active session. She was logged in right now, probably using the cabin Wi-Fi to check a project for Marcus between sets of her scripted audio notes. My heart was pounding against my ribs, a dull thud-thud-thud that echoed the whispering voice on the recording. I didn't feel sadness anymore. The sadness had burned off, leaving behind a cold, crystalline anger. She wanted a life with Marcus? She wanted the thrill of the secret? Fine. I was about to give her all the secrecy she could handle. I began typing a script that would do more than just lock a door. It was a digital scorched earth policy. I pulled up the directory for our family vault, the 5 terabytes cloud drive where we synced everything. I saw a folder I hadn't noticed before, hidden deep within a system library subfolder, titled Legacy_Project_2024. I bypassed the encryption. My breath hitched. It wasn't work. It was a meticulously organized archive of her Gantt secrets, screenshots of her and Marcus's chats, photos that made my blood boil, and even PDFs of non-disclosure agreements she'd signed behind my back. She was planning something, not just an affair, but a transition. She was preparing to leave me and take half of everything, using this leverage to ensure Marcus took care of her. I leaned back, a dark smile playing on my lips. She really thought she was ahead of me. She really thought she was the one with the plan. The silence of the house felt predatory. Every creak of the floorboards seemed to mock the 8 years I had spent building a life with a woman who was currently being coached on how to lie to me by her lover. I looked back at the Legacy_Project_2024 folder. It wasn't just an affair, it was a heist. She had scanned my personal intellectual property, my private research notes on biometric encryption, and even my tax records. She was building a portfolio to hand over to Marcus, a dowry of stolen data to buy her way into his inner circle and secure a massive settlement in the divorce she was clearly planning. I didn't reach for the phone. I didn't pour a drink. I reached for my keyboard. In the world of high-level programming, there is a concept called black hole routing. It's a way to make data disappear so completely that the network doesn't even realize it's gone. It just drops into a void. I opened the admin console for our home integrated server. Sarah's company, Ether Dynamics, provided her with a high-level corporate laptop, but because she hated their slow internal VPN, I had built her a custom bridge. It allowed her to access their mainframe with blistering speed using my own proprietary protocols. It was a gesture of love and support for her career. Now it was a leash. I watched the live traffic monitor. A small green dot pulsed. Sarah Mac Pro connected. She was online, probably sitting on a plush hotel bed, Marcus's shadow falling over her as she finalized the file she intended to use to ruin me. I could almost hear their laughter, the sound of 2 winners mocking the boring tech nerd back home. Let's see how brilliant Marcus is when his star recruit becomes a security liability, I whispered to the empty room. I began by writing a recursive deletion script, but I didn't target the whole drive yet. That would be too fast. I wanted her to feel the floor give way inch by inch. I targeted her legacy folder first. I didn't just delete it. I ran a 7-pass wipe, overriding every sector with random hexadecimal noise. The photos of them in Cabo? Gone. The stolen blueprints of my biometric tech? Vaporized. The insurance policy she thought would make her a millionaire? It was now just a collection of zeros and ones that meant absolutely nothing. Then, I turned my attention to her corporate access. Through the bridge I'd built, I had a backdoor into her user profile. I initiated a security breach protocol. To the Ether Dynamics IT department, it would look like Sarah's credentials had been compromised by a foreign IP address, specifically an address linked to one of their primary competitors in Shanghai. I didn't just lock her out. I triggered a self-destruct flag on her corporate account. In 30 seconds, her email, her Slack, her project management files, and her access to the company's proprietary servers were encrypted by a key that only I possessed. On my monitor, I saw the green dot flicker. She was trying to upload something. Upload failed. Access denied. I could almost see her brow furrowing in that luxury room. I could see her turning to Marcus, complaining that the stupid mountain Wi-Fi was acting up. I saw the dot turn yellow, then red. Session terminated. But I wasn't done. Sarah loved her cloud life. Her entire identity was wrapped up in her social media presence and her massive 2 terabytes personal cloud drive. It was where she kept her perfect wife persona, the curated photos of our hikes, our kitchen renovations, the anniversary dinners. It was the digital skin she wore to hide the snake underneath. I initiated a script I called The Ghost. It started a slow, methodical sync. It wasn't deleting her photos, it was replacing them. Using a basic generative AI script, I took her favorite photos of us and subtly altered them. In every single one, I removed myself and replaced my image with a blurred, static-filled silhouette. Then, I changed the metadata of the files to reflect a date 20 years in the future. The goal wasn't just to take her data, it was to make her doubt her own reality. When she finally managed to log in from a public network, she wouldn't find her memories. She would find a digital graveyard. Suddenly, my phone vibrated on the desk. It was a text from her. "Hey babe, the Wi-Fi here is crazy spotty. Can't even load my email. Can you check if the home server is up? Love you." I stared at the screen. The "love you" felt like a physical sting. I waited exactly 3 minutes. I wanted her to be staring at her screen, waiting for the man who always fixed everything for her. I typed back, "Everything looks perfectly stable on my end, Sarah. Maybe you should ask Marcus to help you with the connection. He seems to have a lot of input on your communications lately." I hit send. My heart was hammering. The read receipt popped up instantly. Then, the 3 little dots appeared as she started to type. Then they disappeared. Then they appeared again. She was panicking. I didn't wait for her response. I had one more task before the night was over. I went into the family cloud settings and changed the recovery phone number and the 2-factor authentication to a burner VoIP number I'd created an hour ago. I then initiated a global sign out of all devices command. With one click, Sarah was digitally homeless. Her phone, her laptop, her iPad, everything she used to navigate the world, became a glass brick. No contacts, no maps, no money through her digital wallet. The green dot on my monitor disappeared. She was offline. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet suburban street. In a few days, she would come home. She would expect a fight. She would expect tears and accusations. She wouldn't be prepared for the cold, empty silence of a life that had been professionally uninstalled. But as I looked at the legacy folder one last time before the final wipe, I noticed a file that had finished decrypting in the background. It was an audio file, dated 3 weeks ago. The title was plan_b.mp3. I put on my headphones, my hand trembling slightly. I thought I knew the depth of the betrayal. I was wrong. The rabbit hole went much, much deeper than a simple office affair. I clicked play on plan_b.mp3, and for a moment, the only sound was the rustle of a silk blouse against a microphone. Then, Sarah's voice came through, but it wasn't the soft, melodic tone she used with me. It was cold, transactional, and sharp as a razor. "He's finishing the Aegis source code by the end of the month," Sarah said. I heard the clink of ice against glass. "Once the biometric bypass is integrated into the firm's main server, David becomes a liability. He's too close to the project. If he stays, he'll see the back doors we're installing." And the accident. That was Marcus. His voice wasn't a whisper this time. It was a growl of ambition. "It has to look clean, Sarah. A car glitch, a smart home malfunction. I won't have the SEC or the feds crawling up my tail because your husband had a sudden realization about our data mining offshore." "I've already mapped his routines," Sarah replied, her voice devoid of any hesitation. "He trusts the system he built. That's his weakness. He thinks the code is his friend. I'll make sure he's logged into the interface when the overload happens. It'll look like a tragic hardware failure. A tech genius fried by his own invention. I'll inherit the patents, and Ether Dynamics gets the proprietary rights. We'll be clear." I ripped the headphones off, my chest heaving. This wasn't just an affair. It wasn't even just corporate espionage. This was a conspiracy to commit murder. My wife, the woman who had sat across from me at breakfast for nearly 3,000 mornings, wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning my funeral to secure a patent. The Aegis tool I was using right now to track her, it was the very thing they wanted to kill me for. A cold, clinical clarity washed over me. The emotional weight of the betrayal evaporated, replaced by the survival instinct of a programmer who had found a terminal virus in his own heart. I didn't have time to mourn. I had to counterattack before Plan B left the planning stage. I went back to the terminal. If Marcus and Sarah wanted Aegis, I would give it to them, but not the version they expected. I opened the core directory of the biometric bypass they were so eager to steal. I began writing a logic bomb, a piece of code that remains dormant until a specific condition is met. The condition? Marcus's unique voice signature and Sarah's facial recognition logging into the corporate server simultaneously from an unauthorized location. Once triggered, The logic bomb wouldn't just delete files. It would initiate a full disclosure protocol. I programmed it to scrape every bit of evidence I had just found, the Plan B audio, the secret chats, the coordinated logs, and blast them to the FBI's Cybercrime Division, the SEC, and the board of directors at Ether Dynamics. But I needed to make sure they tried to use it. I needed to bait the trap. I sent a spoofed email to Sarah's dead corporate account, knowing that Marcus's IT team would be monitoring the crash. I made it look like a panicked system recovery log from me. Sarah, I don't know what happened to your access. I've moved the final Aegis source code to the emergency backup drive. Use the bypass key I gave you if you need to show Marcus the progress. I'm going for a drive to clear my head. Something feels wrong with the house. I watched the screen. I knew Marcus. He was greedy. He wouldn't wait for her to come home. He would want to see that code now. He would think I was falling apart, losing my grip, leaving my fortress vulnerable. Minutes ticked by. My house felt like a tomb. I sat in the dark, the only light coming from the cascading green text on my monitors. Suddenly, a ping. Unauthorized access attempt. Remote IP, Blue Ridge Luxury Resort. They were taking the bait. I watched as Marcus's high-speed connection hammered against my firewall. He was using Sarah's credentials. He was trying to bypass the very security I had spent my life perfecting. He thought he was a god in a $3,000 suit, but in my domain, he was just another script kiddie trying to break a window with a rock. I let him in. I watched the progress bar as he began downloading what he thought was the billion-dollar Aegis source code. In reality, he was downloading a Trojan horse that was currently mapping his entire personal device, his private bank accounts, and his encrypted communications with Sarah. As the download hit 90%, my phone buzzed again. A voice call. Sarah. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail. David? David, answer me. Her voice was frantic now, the sweet wife, persona completely shattered. What did you do? My phone is wiped, my accounts are gone. David, if you're playing some kind of game, stop it. Marcus is furious. We're coming back right now. You better have a damn good explanation for why the server is locking us out. I smiled. She still didn't get it. She thought this was a domestic dispute. She didn't realize she was a passenger on a plane that had already lost its engines. I typed one final command. This one wasn't for the FBI or the company. This was for her. I set her personal cloud drive, the one where I'd replaced her memories with static, to broadcast its contents to her entire contact list, including her parents, her girl trip friends, and her professional network. Everyone was about to see the legacy of Sarah. The download hit 100%. Triggering logic bomb, the screen read. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked out of the home office. I didn't need to be there for the explosion. The code was live. The trap was sprung. By the time they drove back down those mountain roads, they wouldn't be returning to a home or a career. They would be driving straight into a federal investigation. But as I reached my car, I saw a set of headlights turn into the far end of my driveway. They were back early. Much earlier than the GPS had predicted. Marcus's black SUV pulled in, blocking my exit. The door opened, and Marcus stepped out. He wasn't wearing a suit anymore. He was wearing a tactical jacket, and in his hand, he wasn't holding a phone. He was holding something heavy, black, and very permanent. The glare of Marcus's high beams blinded me, casting a long, distorted shadow of my own body against the garage door. I stood frozen for a second, the keys biting into my palm. This wasn't how a tech nerd story was supposed to end. We were supposed to win from behind a screen, protected by layers of encryption and miles of fiber optic cable. But as the heavy click of a firearm's safety echoed in the crisp night air, I realized that Marcus didn't care about the digital world anymore. He was a cornered animal, and he was choosing the most primitive solution available. The server, David, Marcus said, his voice terrifyingly calm as he stepped into the pool of light. You're going to walk back inside, you're going to unlock the vault, and you're going to hand over the decryption keys. Now, Sarah stepped out from the passenger side. Her hair was a mess, and her face was pale, stripped of the polished marketing mask she usually wore. She wasn't looking at me with guilt or even fear. She looked at me with pure, unadulterated loathing. You ruined everything, David, she screamed, her voice cracking. All that work, all those years of building a future. You just couldn't stay in your lane, could you? You had to play God with the network. I played God. I retorted, my voice steadier than I felt. You were planning my accident, Sarah? I heard the recording. Plan B. Did you think I wouldn't hear him whispering to you in that voice note? You're a marketing expert, but you're a terrible actress. Marcus shifted the weight of the gun. Enough. The recording doesn't matter if there's no one left to play it. Sarah, get the laptop from the hall. David moved. I backed up toward the front door, my mind racing. I was outmatched physically, but they were standing in a smart home I had spent 5 years perfecting. Every light, every lock, every speaker was an extension of my nervous system. Marcus thought he was in control because he had a weapon. He didn't realize he was standing inside a giant computer. You shouldn't have come here, Marcus, I said, reaching for the smart lock keypad on the door. You've already triggered the protocol. The FBI has the logs. The SEC has the wire fraud evidence. Even if you kill me, you're spent. I have friends who can make logs disappear, Marcus sneered. But I need that source code to pay them. Open the door. I punched in a code, not the unlock code, but a silent distress sequence. The house didn't hum, it roared. Suddenly, every external floodlight on the property began to strobe at a disorienting, high-frequency rate designed to induce vertigo. At the same moment, the high-decibel security sirens hidden in the eaves of the roof shrieked to life, a 120-decibel wall of sound that made Marcus drop to one knee, clutching his ears. The gun clattered to the pavement. I didn't wait. I dove behind my heavy stone planter as Sarah screamed, disoriented by the flashing lights. I pulled my phone, the only device on the property still synced to the local mesh network, and swiped a single command, garage_deploy. The heavy steel garage door slid shut, separating me from them, but not before I saw the blue and red flashes of police cruisers appearing at the end of the street. My silent distress code hadn't just set off the lights. It had alerted the local precinct to an armed home invasion in progress. I sat on the cold concrete of the garage floor, the sirens muffled but still vibrating in my teeth. On my phone screen, I watched the live feed from the driveway cameras. I watched Marcus try to reach for his gun, only to be swarmed by 6 officers with their weapons drawn. I watched Sarah fall to her knees, sobbing, as the handcuffs were ratcheted onto her wrists. She looked toward the house, toward the camera, and for a brief second, I saw her realization. She hadn't just lost the affair. She hadn't just lost the job. She had been completely erased from the life she tried to steal. Conclusion: the author's perspective. In the end, David didn't just defend his home, he defended his reality. We live in an era where our identities are no longer just flesh and bone, but a complex tapestry of data, voice prints, and digital memories. Sarah and Marcus made the fatal mistake of believing that the man behind the curtain was weak because he worked in silence. They forgot that in a world built on code, the person who understands the architecture has the ultimate power. David lost a wife, but he saved his life by realizing that some bugs in a system can't be patched. They have to be purged entirely. The most chilling part of this story isn't the betrayal or the attempted murder. It's how easily a person's entire existence can be turned into static with a few keystrokes. As we move further into the age of AI and deepfakes, the question remains, do you really know who is whispering in your ear? What would you have done in David's shoes? Would you have gone as far as he did? Or is digital scorched earth too much? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this high-tech thriller, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story of betrayal and digital justice. Thanks for watching.